topic for today's session is territory management. So, what do we mean by territory management? Territory management can be defined as the planning, implementation, and control of salesperson's activities with the goal of realizing the sales and profit potentials of their assigned territories. So, this is territory management. Now, when we are talking about that the assigned territories of the salesperson, so we again have to go into depth and understand then what do we mean by these territories. Territories, the sales territory can be defined as a configuration of current and potential accounts for which responsibility has been assigned to a particular sales representative. So, what is important that we have to understand is each individual salesperson gets some area of work where he has to perform and deliver, bring in the revenues, the sales that is we are looking for. Close the sales with the customer and then bring in the sales. Now, this sales territory that we are talking of is not a geographic territory. That means it is not necessarily that it has to be a particular geographic location we are giving, but it is primarily a customer grouping. And based on this customer grouping, we are saying this is your territory. So, it can be a geographic location also. At times, it can be geographic in nature, but it is not necessarily geographic in nature. It has to be primarily customer groupings, because you can see the definition we have been trying to tell is it is a group of current and potential accounts for which the responsibility has been given to the salesperson. So, he has to cater to the services of the current customers who are already there, see that their needs are fulfilled, and also bring in new customers who are their prospects. So, when we are trying to say managing the sales territory, it would involve all management functions like planning about the sales territory, implementing what you have planned, and also try and see, control the implementation. Control obviously means that whatever you have planned, you see whether you are performing according to that or not. If there is a deviation, you try to correct it. So, all the three functions of management of planning, implementing and control, but it is restricted to the territory. This is what we call territory management. Now, let us see what is the process of territory management. First, it starts with analyzing of the sales territories. Now, what we mean by analysis of sales territories, we have to identify who are the customers and who can be the potential customers. So, when we are analyzing the territory, we do analysis of the account load, account service, account potential. So, we can classify customers according to that these are the major accounts who are giving in a lot of revenue. These are small accounts who are maybe buying in small quantities, but then you also have to not only the amount but also the frequency. All these things are noted. After that, you have to set the objectives. Second step is setting of the objectives. Now, the objectives can be your market share, maximizing market share, or maximizing sales turnover. So, or it could be profitability, your profit targets you set, or maybe even you can have new business targets. The third step is determining of the strategies. So, how can you reach that objective? If you are trying to maximize your sales, then by what strategy will you reach that? So, for that you have to decide on what will be your call frequencies, what can be the product offering that you have, and also the pricing, because by this product offering and pricing, you are going to place that, make presentation to the customer to persuade him to buy. So, those have to match with the needs of the customer. Then, of course, we come to deciding on the tactics. From the strategies tells us actually how to do it. Objectives is telling us The second step objective was telling us what we should do, the guidelines. Strategies is telling us how to do it. And tactics is actually the operational part by how you're going to implement so that the strategies are being implemented. So here we cover, it could be about the territory coverage, it could be the routing and scheduling. So that means how many customers you're going to cover in a day maybe or in a week, and how you're going to do it. So what route will you follow, how you're going to schedule it. This would be the tactical decisions that come into the territory management process. So till this we are planning. After that you have to implement that plan, the fourth stage, and finally of course comes the control part. So control is where you try to see that whatever you have planned, whether it's going according to it or whether there is any deviation. If there is any deviation, you have to take corrective steps so that you can continue with the objectives.
Ma'am, territory management is pretty similar to Salesforce management. Then why is territory management required at all?
One way you have, it is sales management, the steps that we are talking of, like setting of objectives and then determining the strategies and finally deciding on the tactics. These steps are there even when we talk about sales management. Correct, you have correctly pointed out. But here, when we are talking about territory management, it is restricted to each individual territory. That means we have broken down the total market into smaller segments of territories, and a detailed analysis of each of the territory is with you, where you are going to pinpoint and do the management part. So if we are able to do this, we have a lot of advantage. We have a lot of increase in efficiency in the total system. So let's see what are the advantages or rather what are the reasons why we go in for territory management. Then it could answer your question maybe in a better way. Say there are different reasons why territory management is taken up and it improves on the performance. One is the customer related reasons. Second is the salesperson's related reasons. And finally, the managerial reasons. Of course, the top management also has a lot of advantage. Customer related reasons are like, say, you can have an intensive market coverage because you have done such a lot of analysis of your customers, you know exactly, and you are assigning each territory to an individual person. So here, accountability is much higher. So you would find the market coverage, intensive coverage can be done by this. You'll find that the personalized customer services which the customers look for can be delivered much better. And salesperson's related reasons could be, of course, the salesperson gets, because of this total planning, he knows what to do. A lot of enthusiasm is there in him. And also because he knows each territory is being assigned to one individual salesperson. So there's some sort of a competitive feeling also. So a lot of enthusiasm is actually brought into the work. So salespersons are, it fosters enthusiasm in them and also facilitates their performance. And from the management point of view also, in fact, there's a lot of advantage. First of all, it enhances control. So here you can control very well, you know what are the performance standards can be set easily, and each territory can be compared with others much more easily. So evaluation is easier, control is easier, and you also are able to coordinate other activities as in organizing we were discussing much better in a especially promotion related activities in a much effective way. So these are the reasons why we can actually go in for territory management. From these advantages, the benefits that we are getting, again the customer related benefits, because of the intensive market coverage, what happens is higher sales turnover. So if you have sales objectives of maximizing your sales turnover, then through this territory management it can be best achieved. So higher sales can be achieved much more easily by intensive market coverage. you have greater satisfaction, because what happens is when you are actually being able to meet the needs of the customers, giving them personalized service, the salespersons also get a satisfaction in their job. And uh, the salesperson related reasons, because they have a lot of, they're motivated, the morale is high, the turnover in the total sales force is much less, is reduced. It's clear, they know as to what they have to perform and what they are doing. So this clarity brings about less turnover and the reward related efforts. They know that if I am able to do this, this is how I'll be rewarded. Rewards can be financial, can be non-financial, but whatever way. So that motivation is brought about by the reward related efforts that he is putting in. And the managerial benefits are obviously uh, very high, because it reduces costs, it reduces total expense, because there's no chaos, everyone knows as to what to do. And it brings about much more effectiveness in all the programs. Control is easier and much more effective in nature.
Ma'am, how exactly the territories are determined?
Okay, yes, we'll coming to this. How exactly are territories being designed? Yes, we have been talking about breaking down into smaller parts as territories, but how do we actually break it down? First of all, there are certain bases of territorialization. It could be based on geographic factors. It could be based on sales potential. It could be based on service requirements or the total workload that is there. All right, we'll come back and discuss much more in details about exactly how we design sales territories after a small break. So we are back, and let us start with the territorialization process. Looking at a judgmental process, we first try to break down into smaller control units, as we call it. So first, we select a control unit for territorial boundaries. So then we try to determine in that control unit how many customers are there, how many potential customers are there, and current customers are there. So we do an analysis of the customer analysis. And after that, we try to see that each of the territory is more or less equal in nature depending on the base. So if we are considering sales potential, we'll try to see that each of the sales territory, that means the group of customers in each sales territory, offer similar sales potential. So you have to see that each of the control units that you have decided more or less offers same workload for the salesperson and the same sales potential for the salesperson. Now, once that is done, then it may so happen that minor adjustments are required. Initially, we had just, on our judgment basis, we had decided on. Then if after doing this analysis, if you find that the workload is not being equal, then you make certain adjustments. Maybe you shift few customers to this group so that the more or less the workload is same. Then what you have, once the territories have been determined, so this is quite a hell of a job. It's not very easy, and you while deciding on the territories, you have to do a lot of homework is required, as you see. When we're doing this analysis of the sales territories, try to find out about the customers, etc., a lot of information is required. And based on that, you are designing it. After that, what is required is assigning of the salesperson to those territories. So individual assignment of the salesperson to the individual territories. Once that is done, then you set up the territorial coverage plans for the sales force. That is, the routing scheduling is done. And finally, also the last stage of the total implementation process and designing process is you evaluate the effectiveness of the design. Maybe after a period, maybe after 1 year, when you are doing the evaluation, you find that again certain you have assigned some person to a territory where there is high potential, but he is not a very high performer. So the results are not high. So maybe you have to change the person or readjust the territory. So this is the total territorially designing process, the steps. And while we do this, there are basically two methods of territorialization. This process of breaking down the total market into smaller territories is known as territorialization. So here we have two methods. One is build-up method and the other is breakdown method. So while build-up method is generally considered where we have a less number of customers, like industry, depending on the type of product. If it's an industrial product, you will generally find that there are the number of customers are less. So for each customer, you can do a total analysis and you add up to form the territories. So you find, all right, A, B, C and is one territory, whereas only 2, 3, D and E are another, but they are equal on workload and sales potential. So this is generally a build-up method which is based on sales potential. So you try to equalize the sales potential of the territories, and most of the times it is most convenient for products like industrial products where you have less number of customers. On the other hand, where the customer base is very huge, like any fast moving consumer good product or consumer durable product where the customer base is very large, there we do a breakdown method. So because there it is not possible to individually find out the customer requirements and do it, and neither is the salesperson maybe going directly to the customer. They are going to the channel members. So the service requirements of the channel members becomes more important there. So there you go by a workload equalization method. So you try to see for each territory the workload is same for the salesperson. So these are the two approaches for setting up territories. One is the build-up method and other is the breakdown method. One is applicable or more suitable for consumer goods items, which is the breakdown method, and the other is more suitable for the industrial products. So once this territory has been designed, as I told you, the assignment of the salesperson to the territories is another very challenging job for the manager, because individual persons differ in their capability, their ability, their performance, and in a total sales force group, there could be certain who are high performers, who are mediocres, and there are below average. So you have to take the whole group, consider the whole group, and again assign individual assignments with the ultimate objective of maximizing your sales turnover. So how do we do it? So that is dependent on the personal characteristics with the basic objective of maximizing contribution. And this you have to see that it is more or less stable over time. Like for a few months you give one territory to one person, then you see he is not doing well and immediately change him to another. This will not work. You have to be more or less stable to see that how he can adapt and adjust to the changes. And even if after that it is not feasible, then you may change. But one more very important thing here is, it has been seen that there are some salespeople who are quite self-motivated, who can perform even without much of supervision. Now, it has been seen that if you give very potential sales territories with a high potential, we expect that the outcome would be highest. But for a maximum contribution, we find that allocation of high potential territories, if we allocate it to medium, mediocre or above average people, but not highest level, to them, and give a more challenging territory to the high performers, then the maximum contribution becomes more. Because there what is happening, otherwise what would happen if you are giving a territory which is a challenging territory to someone who is not a high performer, the performance of that territory would be lower. But to our objective, sales manager's objective, is to maximize contribution taken together from all the territories. So generally what is done is, a high performer is given a territory which is more challenging, and above average mediocre performer is given a territory where potential is very high, so that he can reap maximum, and accordingly motivate him. Whereas the below average, few are always there who are below average, they need to be guided more, and maybe there you have to have where sales potential is low, you have to assign them, but then you have to monitor them much more than the others. So this is more or less about the sales territory process assignment of people. Now, as I told you, this is also a continuous process, and you have to revise these territories after you're evaluating it. If you see the effectiveness is low, then you have to revise them. Can you tell me what could be the situations when you have to revise the territories? Because we have done a lot of homework and put in a lot of effort, and then finally come about with the territories. So we are not going to do revision of territories until and unless it really necessary. So what could be those situations when we are going to go in for revision of territories?
Ma'am, we may have to basically go in for revision when there is a fall on business activities, or maybe when we need to expand activities. For example, there is a saturation of the existing market, or there is increasing competition.
Okay, that is one of the situations which calls for very good. There are different reasons for which you have to revise territories. These reasons are also, say, some reasons are customer related reasons and some reasons are salesperson related reasons. When there is a shift in the customer business, see, the customer has shifted to another location. So you require to redesign the territory because the customer has gone from that place to another place. Or there could be increased competition, as you rightly pointed out. So these are customer related reasons why we require. Whereas sometimes performing in the same area with the same job profile for long can bring in a monotony in the work of the salesperson itself. And that brings in some frustration in the work. Or sometimes a lot of pressure in the work reduces his stamina. So in that case, maybe he requires a change. So there you have to redesign your territory if required. So these are reasons which are salesperson related reasons. And sometimes there are certain management related reasons also. If we find after evaluation a territory is oversized or undersized. Oversized means there are a lot of potential which you cannot really cope up because it's a big territory and you have to break it down to smaller one. So this could be a management, or when the management is maybe introducing a new product. So along with you have extended your line and you've come about with a new product. So in that case also you may have to redesign your territory. So there are various situations which calls for revision of territory. Now finally, coming down to the tactics which we told, that how really the salesperson would make the visit, the coverage. This is known as routing and scheduling. Routing is the managerial process or the activity which establishes a formal pattern in which the salesperson would go through through the territories to meet the customers. So that is known as routing. So it would depend, of course, on the type of product and the job that he is doing. So you have to establish the different routing, the routes that a salesperson takes up.
Ma'am, but how exactly are these routes established, and does the salesperson have a role in it?
Yes, the salesperson has a role because he is the best person who understands his territory. But there are certain methods of setting up these routes, which are the effective routes. But still there are certain patterns of routing which I would like to give you an idea about. There is a circular pattern where we say the salesperson takes a route which is in just a circle. He starts from one point, goes about in his territory in a circular manner and comes back. There is sometimes which we call is a wedge shaped. So you can see the figure wedge shaped, which shows that you start from one point, first go take a side of the wedge, and then again the other side, and then you come back. Another what we call is a cloverleaf pattern, which looks somewhat like a flower with each petal having a particular cycle. So here what happens is, again, the salesperson is at the center and you take different cycles. By each cycle you cover different set of customers. And the fourth is totally irregular pattern, where you just go straight and then some sort of wherever the customer is located according, you do it and you come back. Maybe this is one cycle week, again you go to another place, another this is irregular pattern is typical, where the location of the customers is very irregular and it is not very close, they are not very close by again. So depending on their location and according to that you have to decide on the routing pattern. So this is more or less how the total territory is managed, starting from setting of the objectives to the strategies and finally coming down to the tactics of routing and scheduling. This sort of territory management obviously increases the efficiency of the salesperson and the total sales organization to a great extent.